Hi, I'm Rashonda. I'm the creator of this YouTube channel and the artbyro.com website where you can find tons of art and drawing tutorials. So be sure to check that out, but watch the video first, of course. In today's art lesson, we're going to be doing a graffiti letter H. This is really fun. It's easy. I'm going to be doing mine on artist trading cards today, and I'll be using markers. But of course, you can do yours however you want. But I do hope you feel inspired to work on some of your own drawings. And we can go ahead and get started. Let's head on over to the art studio. Today I'm going to be drawing a graffiti letter H. One of the things that I love about doing lettering art, whether you want to call it lettering art or graffiti, whatever you want to refer to it as, it's so versatile. There's so many different ways that you can draw your letters, all different types of vibes to them, feel to them. So I love that there's so many different things you can do with lettering. So one of the things I like to do, like usual, I'm working on an artist trading card today. You can use any type or size of paper. I like to start with some basic guidelines. So I'm just gonna get my, just like you would hand write out a letter. And then I want to add some little extras to it. So I might have some lines coming off this way or little legs coming off of this, however you want to refer to those. And then the next step, after you have some guidelines down, this gives you the size, the placement, and kind of the flow of your letter. Then it's just adding in the actual parts of the letter itself, thinking about how wide you want everything to be, what angles you want your letter to come at. Do you want the lines to be curved a little bit? Do you want them to be straight? I think it's more interesting when you add some curves and angles to it, but it's up to you, whatever type of a feel you want. And then just add some extra little pieces coming off to give it a little bit of a flair, a little something unique. Maybe one up here. So there's that side of it. And like I said, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. Then we'll have this one coming down. Maybe we want this to overlap right here a little bit. And then come across. And you can erase if you need to as you go. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It just depends on how much the extra lines start to get in the way, and you don't want them to keep you from being able to see where you're going with the rest of your drawing. You can make these the same, you can make them different. We'll have a line coming off of here, and then see how I'm just using that first guideline to follow and get the flow of the lettering. Or of the letter, I guess it's not really lettering. It could be, you could do the same approach with an entire word. One thing I really like doing though is using the artist trading cards just to work on different style lettering, to practice a little bit, to try out different background ideas, different coloring schemes. It's a really, really good way to practice your drawing skills, and it doesn't take as much time because it's just a smaller size. The artist trading cards are 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches, so you can knock one of these out fairly quickly, get a lot of practice in. So the next thing I like to do is to outline my letters with black, and I'm using a Sharpie pen today. This is usually what I use. It doesn't matter, you can use whatever you have available to you. If you're using markers, you will want something that is waterproof, something permanent, so that when you touch up against it with your markers, it doesn't make it bleed and ruin your drawing. But any type of permanent marker will work, or pen. I like using a pen because it doesn't bleed into the paper as much. It makes a little bit of a crisper edge than when you use a marker. But I also think it's a good idea to experiment and try different things. The downside to using a pen like this is that it doesn't make a very thick line. So if you want a thicker outline, which is more common in graffiti art, then you have to go over it a few times, which for whatever reason, I don't feel that that's tedious to me. It feels very calming and relaxing. So I really don't mind the process of going over this and thickening up the outline. If this is something that feels like a waste of time to you, just feels really tedious, then you might want to use a marker instead, or maybe a brush pen, or just find a pen with a bigger point to it. But I'm literally just going right next to the line I already made and just making it a little bit thicker. And then the next step after that is going to be to use a block eraser, like a pink pearl eraser or any type of bigger block style eraser. And then we'll just go over the whole thing and erase any leftover pencil lines and get rid of those. And then it'll be ready to add some color, which I will be using markers today. I usually use markers. For a while, I was using mostly just color pencils. I kind of got bored with those, wanted to try something different, so I started playing around with markers, which is when I started doing graffiti art. I was actually working on a lesson plan for my 8th grade students for art, and I was trying to find something that they might be more interested in. They weren't too engaged, so I was trying to find something to get their interest, and I landed on the graffiti art. And with that came using markers, because that's typically the medium that graffiti drawings are done with. So I started experimenting with markers, playing around with it, and doing the graffiti art to practice using markers. So that's how I got started with markers and doing the graffiti art. And then I found that not only did my students really enjoy it, but I fell in love with it, and I've been doing it ever since. And that was about 14 years ago now, 15 years, off and on. Like with most things, you do it for a while. I took a break from art altogether for a short period, but I seem to always come back to the graffiti art. I really like doing it. It's a lot of fun. I love doing these artist trading cards and practicing on them. So next is to erase. And I have this eraser. This came with a cheap drawing kit. And then I have also this pink pearl eraser that I use sometimes. Mostly I've been using this black one. But they're nice because you can go right over top of everything. You do want to let if you're using a pen, you want to let that ink dry a little bit. Sometimes, like right there, it'll smear. which I don't worry too much about. These are just making these for fun, so if it smears a little bit, it's not the end of the world. It's not going to hurt anything. So the next thing is to add in some color. And the markers you use will depend on your personal preferences, what type of a budget you have. It can get pretty expensive with the markers. But somebody bought me these, and to be honest, they're terrible markers. I don't like them. But I also don't like wasting anything or throwing things away, so I'm using them today because they do have the colors I wanted, and I really just kind of want to use them up and get rid of them, but I just don't have the personality to just throw them away. But what I was saying about the markers is that a lot of people like the Copic markers are popular, but they're also one of the more expensive markers, or maybe the most expensive marker. I'm not really sure. I tried them in the past when I first started, and they're just, for me, they're too expensive. I can't justify it. I think if you're doing illustration work, or if you're trying to sell your art, then maybe it would be worth splurging and spending the extra money. But for me, I'm just a hobby artist. I do art for my own enjoyment. I do these videos because I miss teaching art. But I can't justify spending whatever, I don't even know how much they cost now. Back in the day, they were, I think, about $6 a marker. And I just couldn't justify that. But you also need to be careful going on the low end. Like these, I think, were bought at like a hobby store or something. And the person that bought them for me, they intended well. People who don't make art, they don't understand the importance of the quality of the supplies that you get. So this person, she was just seeing them. She thought of me. It was a very nice gesture. I very much appreciated it. But like I said, these are just not the best markers. So I try to use them if I can. But I will be happy when they're gone and not taking up space. So all that to say, I would avoid the super cheap markers, because what I noticed with these is they tend to oversaturate the paper. So if you're doing a lot of back and forth blending, that kind of messes up the drawing a little bit. It'll bleed too much. It's warping the paper. So the color's done. That's all I'm gonna do with the color, just a 2-color fade. So what I did was the lighter green at the top, the darker green at the bottom, and then I go over where they meet with the lighter color, and you could also use a colorless blender. And then the next thing is just to make some kind of a background. So a really easy background to do is to do these little bubbles, or like a cloud type of a effect. Usually you'll see them, they're common with graffiti art. And oftentimes you'll see them with a spray can. It's kind of the cloud of paint from being sprayed, I think, is what the concept is here. And you can do this with a pencil, you can do it with a pen, it doesn't really matter, whatever you're comfortable with. If you're not comfortable drawing with a pen or a marker, Then just lay it all out with a pencil first, and then go back over it with your marker or pen. And you want to get some variety of sizes, and the shapes vary a little bit, so you don't want it real uniform. You want it to be more random. You can do these with a heavier outline. You can do them with a smaller outline. You could always outline them with something other than black. It's up to you. When I make these videos, I like to try to give you some ideas for ways you can do it different from how I'm doing it. I think following along is fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But my goal is always to inspire you to do your own unique art, not just follow it step by step doing the same exact thing. So there's a lot of ways that you can add variation with your artwork, especially with graffiti or lettering style art. You can change up the background. You can change the style of the letters. You could do, if you did a bubble letter would look much different than the style letter. If you rounded the edges, it's going to look different than when you have sharper edges. All those little things make a big difference in the overall feel and look of your artwork. And we want some of these going off the side of the page. We could have some coming in this way. Maybe not going all the way to the letter. If you had your outline in color instead of black, that would make your drawing look different. So all the little things will change the overall look and feel of your art. So just keep that in mind when you're doing it. A lot of different ways to change it up. So now I'm going to use this fuchsia color for the background. Fill those in. You could fill the whole background in with color. You can leave the background white. Lots and lots and lots of options. You could do a light and a dark in here, like we did with the letter, and make these different colors. You could try making your letter just one solid color. You could add some designs inside your letters. A lot of different ways to add some variety. I like doing a series of drawings. Usually I'll do 7. And I would try to do one each day for 7 days and do something different each day. So if my theme for the 7 days would be the letter H, one day I might do a bubble letter, one day I might do a block letter, one day do a graffiti letter. I could do the same drawing for my letter, but change up the way that I do the color, or change up the background. When I do those challenges like that, the goal is to push myself to try something new, get out of my comfort zone a little bit, and experiment without the fear of failing, and just trying it and see what happens. And I found when I started doing these, what I found was that by doing a series of them, if one of them gets messed up, then I still have 6 good drawings that turned out. So it takes away that fear of failure. And I'll do my challenge on artist trading cards so that they don't take as much time as doing a big drawing. And again, if I mess up, it's not that big of a deal because I didn't spend a long time on the drawing. So doing those challenges have really been a huge benefit to me. And I've come up with some pretty interesting drawings that I wouldn't have done otherwise, because I probably would have been afraid to try something new. So now I'm just going to take this small purple and just make some little accents on here, just to break up this background a little bit more. And like I said, you could also fill the rest of the background in with color. Maybe a real light purple might work good. And you can do this as many of them as you want, or as few. It doesn't really matter. So actually, I think I might try doing the purple in the backgrounds. I'm gonna find me a real light purple marker and I'll be right back. All right, so I found a purple, which actually in that set of cheap markers. So I'm just gonna fill in the entire background with this light purple, which I should have done before adding those little accent marks, because they are still wet. They're gonna bleed a little bit, but I can go back over them. It'll be fine. I'm just gonna fill this in. The markers that I like to use, so you can mix and match markers. You don't have to stick with all the same brand. This thinner marker is just a regular Bic marker. I used those for a while. I do like the Bic markers. The only thing I don't like about them is you have to buy them in sets of color, or in sets to get the colors that you want. So if one of the markers runs out, you have to buy an entire set to get that one marker. And then you end up with a bunch of extra markers, because what you'll find out is some of the colors you'll use a lot more often than others. You're not going to use the whole set of markers evenly. So you'll have one color that you use all the time, and that'll run out, but then you still got all those other markers. You don't need a whole set, you just need that one marker. But they're not available. At least I have never been able to find them. But any name brand marker, and there's a lot out there, there's a lot of different ones. One of the first better quality markers that I bought were the Prismacolors. So I have a bunch of those, and those were okay. The style that they were back then, when I first bought them, I didn't care for, most markers are dual tips, and at the time the small tip on the Prismacolors was too small. It was like a really small pen. But what I found with them is that that end always dried out, so you couldn't even really use it, but it was actually too small to do much with anyway. And then the other side was really big, so doing something like on an artist trading card isn't really possible. So you had one end was really big and one end was super small, so they're not very practical, I guess you could call it. But I don't think they even make that style marker anymore. I think they redesigned them and made them a little bit better. The dual tips are nice. A lot of the markers are dual tip. So that's one thing to look for, but I would just caution you to stay away from the super cheap markers. But if that's the only thing you can afford, then I would say that's better than nothing, and you can learn to work with them. But probably just get the best quality marker you can afford, because you do need to have quite a few markers if you want to be able to blend your colors together. So the last thing I typically do with my drawings is I will add white with a jelly roll pen. And normally what I'll do is just pick some areas, add a little bit of white. And what I'm trying to do more than anything is just to break up these big areas of color. I'm not really thinking too much about a light source or anything like that when I do it. I'm just looking where I want there to be some contrast to the color and adding a little bit of white. And you can do lines, you can do some little squigglies, however you want to do it. You could add some white here, break these up a little bit. I usually just look at where I think there's too much color. I don't like all the flat color. So this breaks it up a little bit, adds some variety. Again, you can do as much or as little, whatever you think looks right. And then that's pretty much it. I'm going to call this one done. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you feel inspired to create some of your own lettering art. And I will see you in the next one. Happy creating! Well, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully you followed along, or at the very least you feel inspired to start working on some of your own graffiti lettering. Don't forget to hit that like button if you did enjoy it. And also you can subscribe if you want to get notified of future videos. And make sure you check out that description box. There's some information in there for you as well. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!